Good evening. I want to begin, if you don't mind, with a little quiet. I am standing on the roof of the Mouseion. Below me, a long building, its lamps being lit one by one as the scholars come back from their suppers and pick up the work they left at noon. Below that, Alexandria, going about the last of its day. The galleys at anchor in the harbour, the bread ovens cooling finally, and the Pharos at the far end of the long mole just beginning to send out its beam, catching for a moment the underside of a low cloud, then letting it pass. I have come up here alone to watch the lamps come on. They light one by one in the long rooms beneath my feet, a painted rectangle of light running the length of the Mouseion. They will be on beneath me before they are on anywhere else in the city. Most of what most of you have heard about me is the asp, the barge, the eyeliner, and a play someone wrote about me a long time after I was gone. The asp comes at the end. I will not give you the day. The truth of the matter, in any case, no one really knows. I want to tell you, in the time I have, about a roof, and a library beneath it, and a tongue I learned that no Ptolemy before me had bothered to learn, and a country older than the city I ruled. Come up here with me if you will. The wind is off the harbour. The lamps in the library are coming on. We will start there. I was the 7th Cleopatra. I was the first one who could speak to her own subjects without an interpreter. My father was Auletes, the flute player. He kept a household of music, a court of well-fed advisers, and a debt to Rome we could not pay. He played the flute himself, badly, in the long colonnade in the evenings. He would ask his old Cretan tutor, very gravely, whether he was getting better. The tutor would tell him kindly that he was. He was not. There was a kindness in the long colonnade, in the bad music and the kind listening, that stayed with me. He was not a serious king, and he knew it. I was fond of him for the knowing. I was sent down the same colonnade myself at 7 or 8 to learn what royal children learn. I was given languages from a young age, the way other children were given dolls. I went home with them in the evening. When I was 13, I asked my Egyptian nurse to teach me her language. She refused. She said it was not a language for queens. I asked again the next day. She said the same. I asked for 6 months. She gave in, finally, in the kitchen, with a pot of barley boiling between us, by teaching me the word for barley. A soft word in the mouth. I cried because I had been so happy to learn it. In my 19th year, just come to the throne, I went south to a small temple at Hermonthis to install a new sacred bull at the temple of Montu. The bull was old. No Ptolemy had spoken to its priests in their own language in 300 years. The chief priest had a face like an old map. He looked at me when I greeted him and said after, very quietly, that I had said the words better than my father had ever said them. He did not need to say it. I sat down in the barge after, and I wept. Then a quarrel with my brother, which Rome arrived in time to settle. A general I had not asked for came into my harbour looking for a different prince, and was given me instead. The city I walked back into after was the city I would keep for the rest of my life. About the library. I will not give you a tour of the rooms. I will give you a tour of the people who lived in them. The chief librarian, when I was a young queen, had been at his post longer than I had been alive. He could tell, by smell, which workshop in which decade had copied out which scroll. He did not boast about this. He thought it was the least a librarian could do. We had a quiet arrangement, he and I. He sent me, every month or two, a small list of books he thought I would want to read. I read them. I would come down to the long rooms afterwards, and we would argue about them, very mildly, in front of an audience of 2 cats and an old reading stool. I have had worse evenings. Olympus, my physician, was a careful, kind man, a writer of memoirs by lamplight. He once spent 4 months teaching me to take my own pulse, because he said a queen who could not feel the rate of her own heart was a queen who would be governed by other people's. He was right. He outlived me and wrote down what I would not have written down myself, kindly, in his night hand. About the languages. I was told in my youth, by people who ought to have known better, that languages were not the proper concern of queens. I find that they are. The proper concern of a new tongue, in fact, is to embarrass you, fluently, for the first 6 months. After that it becomes quiet and useful and your own. I had 7 of them. The one I was most proud of was the worst one. An envoy came once from the troglodytes, the cave dwellers, who had walked for 3 months to bring me a question. He had brought a translator. I listened to the translator. Then I answered, in his own tongue, with the 6 sentences I had managed to learn. I am told I got most wrong. He went home with a story. So did I. 2 small things before the evening goes on. They are mine to say. The first is about a book I did not write. I am sometimes credited with a book on cosmetics. There may have been a book. I do not insist on it. The librarians who copied out the books of others on my watch did the work I am most proud of. The book of recipes, if it existed, was not the work I would point to. The second is about a fire I did not stop. A fire in the harbour during a war took some of what we had. I will not tell you whose war or whose fire. Antony, who came later, took it on himself to do the replacing. He went down to the docks the morning the ships from the north arrived. He had been told to look ceremonial. He failed at it. He stood at the foot of the gangplank in his old travelling cloak, torn at the hem, and handed each crate of scrolls up the steps, by hand, to the librarians waiting. He apologized to a copyist for the dust on the lid. She forgave him. We copied through that summer with the windows open. The rest, what no one could replace, we copied back from libraries who had earlier copied us. That is how a library survives, not by burning less, by copying more. There was a year after the world has wanted to talk about more than I do. A naval matter in the autumn, a change at the top of the country. The histories have it. The morning I came back, I went down to the library first. The chief librarian, past 80 by then, was already in the room of the maps with a single lamp. He did not stand. He nodded at the desk across from his. I sat. We worked till the lamps went out on the recopy of an old star chart we had been meaning to remake for a decade. Neither of us said a word about anything else. He understood. I have not had a kinder hour since. I had taken by then to spending a week each year on the river, going south. I will tell you about that later. What the cultivation has meant. I was inside it. I am the wrong person to answer that. But come with me for a moment, back into the library, back into the long rooms at evening, and I will point out what I see. In the first room, lamp on the desk, a librarian is reshelving. Climbing the small stepladder, putting back into its pigeonhole the scroll she pulled at noon for a reader who has now gone home. She knows the order without looking. She has taught the order to 2 girls who will know it after her. In the next room, a copyist has her brush poised and is fixing, without being asked, a torn margin on a scroll that is older than her grandmother. She does it carefully. She does not sign her name to it. The next reader will not know whose hand it was, and the next reader will not need to. In the room after that, a teacher is writing out a passage by hand, slowly, for a child she will see tomorrow morning who has not yet learned to read it well. The teacher, when she was that child, had her passage written out for her by another teacher whose name has been forgotten. She is not in the business of being remembered. And out in the courtyard, in the last of the sun, a stranger to the city is learning a phrase in our language and trying it, badly, on the breadseller. And the breadseller, with great kindness, is answering in the stranger's language, which she has bothered to learn back. I am a custodian, not an inventor. I had a city in Egypt and I learned, late, to look outside it. I would like to think the looking outside has gone by now into many other cities. Every age, I think, is in a hurry to build. I recognize the temptation. We had it in this city, to mistake the building for the city, to mistake the wall for what is inside the wall. What holds a city together is not the wall. It is the 1,000 quiet hands inside it, keeping what was inherited copied, taught, translated, repaired. The wall keeps out an army, the hands keep the city itself. We all know, I think, the difference between the thing we built ourselves and the thing we kept on behalf of those who came before us. The kept things outnumber the made things in any age by a great deal. We are mostly the keepers, and we are mostly slow to admit it. The translator who chooses a footnote over a flourish because the writer earned the words and the translator did not. The clerk who keeps the receipts longer than the office requires. The grandmother who tells the story the same way she heard it because she remembers the telling that gave it to her. We are most of what we are because someone, before us, took the trouble. Most of what is good in any city is being kept, just now, by people the city does not know to thank. Every age, also, has its version of the question of what gets translated and who does the translating. The tongue not your own, the book from somewhere else, the neighbour you have never quite met. There is a quiet decency available, in any century, in the willingness to learn one phrase poorly and to offer it. One personal note before I close. I came to my own country late. The Greek city I ruled was not the whole of Egypt, it was the harbour and the colonnade and the lamps on the long library roof. The older country was waiting for me south of Memphis, and I was slow to go and find it. I was 25 before I went. I should have been 10. We are all, perhaps, slow to go and find the country older than our city. The city is not the whole of it, whatever the city, whatever the century. I will tell you, in the privacy of this evening, where I would like you to find me. It is not on this roof, it is on a barge. I had taken to spending a week each summer on the river, going south, past the delta, where the Nile becomes the only road, past the long green strip where the country begins to remember itself, past Memphis with its temples on the bank and its old smoke. The barge was small. It was not the gilded sort. I had a cook, a steward, 2 of my women, and an Egyptian pilot who knew the river the way the chief librarian knew the scrolls. The river smells different at different latitudes, sweeter in flood, harder in the low season, like cut grass in some places, like wood after rain in others. And, this is what I want you to keep, the smell of papyrus drying on a bank in the late sun. Reeds, cut and laid out, turning slowly the colour of honey, 2 hours from being a scroll someone in my city would copy onto. At a small temple on the river, an old priest spoke to me, in my Egyptian, about a god I did not know was still being worshipped. He spoke about him the way you speak about a relative who is still very much alive. I had nothing to say back. I listened. And in a village not long after, a child came up to the barge, looked at me without a curtsy, and asked if I was the Greek queen, and when I said yes, asked if I would like to come and see his goat. I went. I will tell you, in the privacy of this evening, that the goat was the best thing I saw in my country. I had been told it was a good country. I had not, until that week, gone to look. I wish you a roof from which to watch the city you have kept. I wish you a scroll someone bothered to copy out for you. I wish you a tongue not your own that you have cared enough to learn. And I wish you a country older than your city that you remember at evening when you go down to the harbour. That is enough for one evening.